Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at B2B World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two important developments. The first is, of course, in reference to an important concern that the country has been witnessing for quite some time now regarding its economic conditions, with foreign reserves as low as just for 2 weeks. This is a serious crisis that Pakistan has been in, and of course, a very tough point for the government as well in terms of the challenging options that remain. There is, of course, the very important discussion, the 9th review with the IMF that has begun with the IMF team visiting Pakistan and arriving yesterday, and will be continuing their talks with the team till the 9th of February. But there's obviously, of course, concern with regards to how we're going to proceed with the very tough conditions in terms of the cost that the public will have to bear. For quite some time now, the government has, of course, tried to balance the two, but recently the Prime Minister announced it to the IMF that the conditions will be met and that Pakistan will be providing the roadmap as per the requirements shared earlier. It remains to be, of course, seen exactly what sort of negotiations are going to take place, whether or not we can buy some time or any sort of value in terms of whether or not the conditions will be implemented altogether, and when exactly will the payment be coming in, and how that's going to impact the other commitments that we've had from friendly countries like China and Saudi Arabia. And so a lot depends on the way that the 9th review goes forward and what exactly that means for the current economic conditions, the prices that people have to pay, and the number of measures that Pakistan will have to take. In the meantime, of course, we also know that the background of the political situation and the global indicators have also been impacting the situation. So we're going to be taking into account all of these variables to try to understand where we stand today and how we're going to move forward, particularly with the IMF, and then, of course, with regards to the series of measures that the government will have to take and the political cost it will have to bear in this tough time as well. Our next segment will be taking a look at the political situation and we'll be considering the kind of implications that exists, especially in the aftermath of the unfortunate and highly condemnable terrorist incident that took place in Peshawar at a mosque in the police lines area, where more than 100 people have lost their lives. And because of this, of course, there are major security concerns, particularly in the province of KP. And so the question has risen with regards to whether or not we'll be witnessing any delay in the elections in the province. Of course, we have heard whether or not this is going to take place is going to have huge impacts on the political and economic situation of the country, and of course that may be a given, but it seems that when we take a look at the current scenario, there are a lot of concerns in place that perhaps will have to be taken into account. So we're going to be taking a look at that in particular, as well as where we stand in terms of the political situation of the country today as well, and what this means for the elections in both the provinces of KP and Punjab, and then of course the upcoming general elections later this year as well. We also know that the PML-N had tasked Ms. Mariam Nawaz to lead the campaign, what is being called the reorganization tour, in which she has spoken in front of the people today, also in Bahawalpur, where she has mentioned a number of people, that, including the PTI chairman and 2 former chief justices, that have been the cause of the current conditions that Pakistan is facing, and how the regime have impacted and damaged the political situation, and of course the rest of the dynamics of the country as well. And she said in the coming days in the campaign there will be more evidence coming out, and it will be quite clear who was involved and what sort of actions and measures have been taken which have resulted in the conditions that Pakistan is in today. Regarding the elections in Punjab also, she mentioned that because of the kind of measures that the PML-N has taken, and of course with her presence here as well, and the way that the people support the party, there will be a clean sweep in Punjab by the PML-N. Of course, much of that remains to be seen as well moving forward, and what that means in terms of the strategies that are going to be employed, or the stance taken by the PML-N, the PPP and the PTI as well. So we're going to be taking a look at all of this in light of the current security and economic conditions as well that continue to impact the politics of the country. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Patafi, and for our first segment regarding the economic conditions and talks with the IMF, we've been joined by Dr. Aqdas Afzal, who's a senior economist. Thank you very much, Dr. Aqdas, for joining us and being a part of the debate. And let me start with you. Of course, the much awaited visit of the IMF is here, and there was a lot, of course, with regards to the kind of discussions that are going to take place that has been debated in the past. But now that we have the team here and the conversation has started, what do you think will be the major points of discussion, since principally we have agreed to accept all of the conditions and to implement those? So what will it be that we will be looking forward to in terms of the negotiations, whether or not there can be any sort of advantage or any ease that can be asked for, or we can get from the IMF?
Thank you very much, Sana. Thank you for having me on the show. Very happy to be here. I think, first of all, there are 3 or 4 things that the IMF is going to ask the government, and I think the finance minister has all but agreed to the demands of the IMF, and those are primarily to make sure that the levy on petroleum reaches rupees 855 billion. Number 2, that we are able to raise extra taxes in the neighborhood of almost 500 billion rupees, because those are going to then ensure that the target, the fiscal target for the year, or fiscal revenue target for the year is met, because there were some amount was not able to be, they were not able to collect some amount, because one of the ways in which the government planned on collecting that tax, that is through a super tax, it was struck down by the courts. So because of that, the government was not able to collect some tax. So we will see a mini budget that will impose additional taxes worth rupees 500 billion. Then one condition, that is of the exchange rate being determined by market forces, has already been met by the government. And then finally, there is also talk that the government has agreed to increase electricity prices by about 30% and gas prices about 70 to 80%. So these were the 4 major demands of the IMF. All of these have been met, or assurances have been given, and those assurances have been deemed credible by the IMF. So I expect an announcement stating that the government of Pakistan and the IMF have reached a consensus, and that the program is back in line, which is going to be displayed through, uh, through the release of the tranche of US dollar 1.1 billion before mid-February. Yeah.
Right. Dr. Aqdas, you talk about the assurances that Pakistan has provided and how perhaps have been met with a positive response by the IMF. What does that mean in terms of the kind of roadmap that is provided? Are you talking about the way that Pakistan would be implementing the various conditions, and whether or not there is any aspect of that roadmap that is being questioned? Because, of course, we were also there was also discussion regarding the fact that maybe we can have a way forward in which all of the conditions are not implemented simultaneously. Is there something of that aspect part of the roadmap?
And Dr. Saab, is there a strict timeline?
Well, to answer the last question first by Furrow, I think the timeline is before the end of this fiscal year, because there is now talk, and economists like myself feel that when Pakistan finishes this present program successfully, that would be time to go into another IMF program, because the economic situation or the situation of the foreign exchange reserves is going to be such that we are going to need some more assistance from the IMF. This is not unusual. For instance, Egypt went back to the IMF 4 times in the last 6 years. So, I mean, depending on what the country needs, countries can keep going back to the IMF. So there is nothing untoward or unprecedented in this step. Now, to answer the question about assurances, I think these assurances have been deemed credible by the IMF, and the assurances are basically relate to the IMF through a new memorandum of economic and fiscal framework, which basically outlines as to what type of fiscal deficit or primary fiscal deficit targets the government has agreed on with the IMF. And only once the government is able to get a green signal from the IMF, is the IMF going to release the tranche. So I think I see things moving towards a consensus and a conclusion, and I feel that the economic situation is going to stabilize before the mid-February.
All right, and we'll talk more about coming back to the IMF as well, because I have a few questions regarding that. But Farooq, considering the important and tough conditions that we are in conversation with the IMF, there is of course going to be a huge impact that the public will have to face. They're also of course currently already facing that once the cap on the exchange rate was lifted, and then of course with regards to the increase in petroleum prices, and because of that there is still already a lot of ruckus in terms of the way that the public is going to have to face this and what sort of response there exists. There is of course the fact that this is the option that we have at the moment, but in terms of public understanding and the way that the public is going to respond to these issues and the impact that these conditions will have, there is a political cost. But what is going to happen in terms of whether or not this is accepted in large part by the people, especially, for example, we had issues at petrol stations or in general people protesting to the prices.
Right, Sana, to answer your question, I was wondering when has the consumers in Pakistan or people come out and actually protested the way we were fearing, right? I see here and there might be sporadic or there might be accidental protest, but that is one thing. You won't see the kind of protest that the country was accustomed to say during Ayub Khan's time, when there was a price hike in sugar and a few other commodities, and people all of a sudden were out and they pushed the government out of power. That is not happening. What does it tell you? It tells you that the people of Pakistan, despite being hard pressed, understand the cost of whatever is happening, right? There is an alternative, and that is we break off from IMF and refuse to do anything at all and go down the Sri Lankan path. That issue was also very amply highlighted by our media circuit, so people know that at this moment, whatever fiscal belt tightening is taking place, whatever cost they have to pay, it is better than the alternative. Because in Sri Lanka, fuel rationing was taking place. The prices of stuff was really going through the roof. Let me also point out two things regarding the negotiations that are going on. Because in newspapers I've seen various statements actually that IMF is demanding that there should be a political consensus on these matters, right? Amazingly, let me tell you how this works. The fund and their negotiators never talk to the media about the items that are there. And what happens then? Who is actually talking to the media? Usually your side, your bureaucrats, your officials, or even politicians in certain aspects. They keep on leaking this information. And usually when it is being leaked, it is the impression of the person who is leaking that actually spreads out, right? It goes to the media. It is more like Chinese whispers. You cannot say for certain that that was the demand that was made. Regarding you and I, we keep on advocating the cost increase and all these subsidies being removed. But we are also working people, right? We are the worst hit as well, because the first thing that I see after arguing for a price hike when I go back to home is the bill that keeps on jumping all the time. And of course, I'm a salaried man. That must be the case with you and Dr. Aqdas as well. So whosoever is talking about need to comply understands the cost or the stakes. And whosoever does not want to actually agree with this, perhaps is not understanding it out of their own desire to take risk. And we have seen one political party that actually, whose leaked audio tapes actually showed that they wanted to sabotage IMF deal, and no matter what the cost. And its leader also kept on telling us that Pakistan is going to end up like Sri Lanka. So these are aspects which people seem to understand, and that's why despite being this much inflation, and I cannot tell you that how badly it is affecting the most vulnerable,
Of course.
especially because we have actually created a diversion. One category is the poor, the other category or subcategory is lower middle class. Lower middle class also barely keeps its head,
Floating.
over the water, out of the water. And what is happening at this moment is that in houses, I know it for a fact, people are rationing that which children actually eat what and how much, and whether today they should actually skip a meal to pay the bill for their schools or the transportation or electricity bill. So
Right.
in that kind of a situation, what is happening right now is that IMF comes, it ensures that whatever financial breather Pakistan is going to get is not actually squandered away. Then, of course, the commitments that were made regarding floods, they will start arriving as well, and then the money will start trickling down. So there will be some kind of cushion for the vulnerable once you get over this deal and you get across this river.
Right. Dr. Aqdas, earlier you also mentioned with regards to the fact that there will be a return to the IMF most likely. But I also want to understand it in the context of where we stand today. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talk about the success of the ninth review, it means that we'll get immediately, we'll perhaps be able to get access to about 1 billion or so. And that might also symbolically or have an impact on the way that other bilateral engagements or countries like China and Saudi Arabia and their inflow of commitments coming in. But in terms of the exact, the absolute numbers, where our current foreign reserves stand, how much of a contribution will these amounts actually be, and how long can those also last? I understand that the conditions are there to be able to have some sort of a flow back as well and to have a plan. But in terms of where we stand today and the kind of costs that are around the corner, for example, the political costs that we have, the election costs, the security costs, how exactly is this amount going to, in absolute terms, impact us?
You are exactly right when you mentioned that the funds coming from the IMF, or the fact that Pakistan is back on the online as far as the extended fund facility or the IMF program is concerned, is going to unlock many other funds from friendly countries. So you are exactly right when you say that. Now, to answer your question, I think we need to draw a distinction. Pakistan is not facing a solvency crisis. Pakistan is facing a liquidity crisis. So when I say Pakistan is facing a liquidity crisis, what this really means is that we have to have a certain number of foreign exchange reserves in order to be able to import, in order to be able to import fuel and other very essential items from wherever we import these things from. So what we need to do right now is to make sure that Pakistan has enough liquidity for at least 3 months worth of imports. And I think that number is probably around, I wouldn't be mistaken, probably around $9 to $10 billion. And I think until and unless we hit $9 or $10 billion, Pakistan is going to be in a very precarious situation uh, when it comes to being in a situation whereby we are not facing a liquidity crunch when it comes to the foreign exchange. So I think that is something that our policymakers are looking at right now. When it comes to Pakistan, taking care of its financial obligations, that is, paying back interest on the loans that have been taken, in being able to roll over the loans that it has taken, and to be able to get loans from the commercial market or Paris Club or London Club. I don't foresee any problems vis-a-vis Pakistan, because Pakistan, is a country that also generates about 62 billion worth of, US dollar in terms of our total export earnings, plus the remittances that come in. So I think there is a distinction. We are facing a liquidity crisis, but Pakistan should still be able to, service its financial liabilities. Yep.
Right, Dr. Aqdas, one last question. When we take a look at where we stand today, there's also concern of course, us not being able to, not being in the same position again, or being able to progress from where we stand today in the coming months and years. I understand the timeline you earlier referred to was the end of the current fiscal year, but does that hold true irrespective of whatever political setup we have, whatever government we have, whoever we have in the finance ministry? Is whatever is being discussed and decided right now going to be implemented at least for sure in the next coming months?
Look, I have my views on who I think is a better economic policy maker, but I think, being a professional economist or a technical person, I'm not going to share my personal views. How I do think that, if we have a good team in place after June, this is absolutely going to increase the probability of Pakistan ending up in a better economic position versus not having a good economic team.
Sure,
So,
but my question is that the agreement that it is decided today will be binding for whoever it is at the current moment till at least the end of the fiscal year. Is that correct or not?
in an ideal world, yes, but
All
what
right.
happens after the elections,
no.
we have no idea.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Afzal, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. I
Thank
believe
you.
that's all that you have time for. Thank you very much for being a part of the discussion. Farouk, considering the situation, of course, the concern that I had when we were speaking to Dr. Aqdas was whether or not moving forward we will be going in circle, or will be moving towards at least some sort of future that we all hope for. And so the success at this moment that we're hoping for is the success of the 9th review. But what about the rest of the measures that are needed in order for our economy to grow?
Right, Sana, when you were talking about going in circles, you actually took me back to the debate about historiography, whether history progresses in any pattern or not. I think that Marx was spot on when he said, Karl Marx was spot on when he said that history repeats itself first as a tragedy, then as a farce. The biggest problem at this moment is, of course, we keep on making the same mistakes, and we have done it for past 70 years. Why else are we here, right? But here's the thing. I understand your concern that there can be political changes. For example, there's going to be an election eventually, and after that election, there's going to be another government. And in the meanwhile also, there will be a caretaker setup. So how these policies or commitments will be assured, ensured that their policy continuity is there. I think that is very clear. Part of Pakistan's, institutions and office bearers change. Part of them remain the same. For example, your finance ministry, your FBR, your other institutions are going to be there, right? People who are salaried people, who are professionals, who are committed to these aspects, they will be in office and they will stay put. So I think any commitment that Pakistani state makes will be Pakistani state's commitment, right? And we have seen in the past as well, Imran Khan Sahib used to say that if I come to power, I will commit suicide before going to IMF. But what happened then? He went to IMF, and the kind of deal he struck was it reminded you of Harakiri, right? That kind of commitment, that kind of stern commitments that he had to make. Similarly, in the past also, whenever a commitment was made, this good news is that with this, last phase, we are going to conclude at least this program. So all the commitments that are made can be, made part of the structure so that in coming days it cannot be changed, right? In the end, however, it is for certain, if economy grows, then there is going to be cushion for the people. If our exports increase, then all this liquidity crisis is also going to go away. Similarly, if remittances increase and people rely on your official channels to send back remittances, that is not happening right now. All these things are going to improve your economy. We might be in a bind right now, but it is not permanent. It is not anything that is so structured that we are going to actually keep on circling the drain. We won't.
Okay.
The only thing is, at this moment, we need commitment. And we need to be clear with the people of Pakistan that this is what we have committed and it has to be done. And regarding political costs, Sana, I don't think that there is going to be one party that is going to be penalized for whatever is happening. At this moment, 13 parties are in power. Before that, this deal was struck by PTI. So all are there. And nobody, people in 50 channels world, or country, you know that people are being informed enough to know that economy is going to actually survive.
Right, that's encouraging, and we hope that better days are coming.
Yeah.
We're going to now move on to the political scenario as well, which is, of course, a very important factor with regards to economic conditions, security conditions, and the rest that is happening within the country. For this, we've been joined online by Rana Maqbool Ahmad Saab, who's the Senator PML-N. Thank you very much, Rana Saab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. We, of course, are wondering now what's going on, especially in terms of the elections with regards to what has happened in KP, and of course the kind of statements that we've been hearing coming in with regards to the delay in elections. I believe both the governor and the CM KP has approached the ECP with contradictory statements as to what their opinion is in terms of whether or not the elections need to be held. But what do you think can be a possibility, especially with regards to the security conditions in the aftermath of the blast in Peshawar, and what should be done in terms of where we stand today?
Thank you, Snap. My salam to Padafi Sahab. Yes, the condition is precarious as far as security issues are concerned, especially the latest onslaught and this bloodbath caused by Taliban of TTP. That is very tragic and very inhuman. And perhaps in history of terrorism, this is perhaps the second largest score they have gone for of innocent human lives. So the challenge is colossal, and that is to be dealt with firmly and now with great chivalry and skill and competence by the government. What we observed today in KPK, the level of preparation was very poor. For example, you might have seen on media as well, they don't have even the basic facility of forensic laboratory, which is so immaculate in Punjab. Why couldn't they make it? They were in government for the last over 10 years. They could have built a laboratory because they knew this province was more vulnerable than other provinces as far as crime and especially terrorism is concerned. So they were not prepared to face the situation. Number two, if we go into a detailed analysis of their weaponry and gadgetry, that's also dismal situation. They have not pumped in proper money. If the money was pumped in, it was not honestly used, unfortunately. And there were no snipers, and there were no proper arms and ammunition. The boys who were working on the front, they were not properly trained, and they don't have the requisite skills to fight back. So they were very poor in combat capability. So these are all areas of weaknesses, including the morale, because the officers or jawans who make sacrifices, though their lip service is carried out, but they are not substantively rewarded, and their families are not looked after that way, because that requires reasonable
Right. So, Rana Sahab,
no.
who's going to do that? Who's going to look after them and equip them to be better prepared?
No. I think the interim government, though, they have this challenge before them, though they're very slow and their pace to reform things. As far as I remember, only about 4.5 years before, once the President Chief Minister was a caretaker interior minister, and the Senate came once the election of 2018 were about to be held, along with the Minister for Law, Mr. Ali Zafar. I stood up in the Senate on the floor, and I made a request very humbly in presence of the about 80 senators, look, you as an interior minister, you're a very honorable person, you're a brother of one of the best police officers, the Khan, and we have a lot of respect for you. And Ali Zafar, being son of a great law laureate who was our teacher as well, you owe a great responsibility for the conduct of your elections. Now, challenges before you. If you deliver, you'll go in history as commendable people. If you don't, then history will give a verdict adversely. But they could
Right.
not contribute. They could not contribute, and history has ruled against them.
Sure,
Unfortunately,
I
he's a
understand
very
that, Rana
senior
Sahab,
man.
but what about the
I'm
elections?
talking about the capability of the head of the administration. There has been access to him. He is not in very fit condition of health. He is old, and I don't think so he'll be able to face these tensions which the chief of the executive of province has to come across, especially a province like KPK. Elections, yes, there are two opinions as far as the decision-making levels are concerned. Number one, they think there are manifold crises in the country, like terrorism and unstable economy and unbridled inflation and a lot many other issues are there. So they say in state of emergency, the elections are generally can be delayed. For example, they say once Benazir was martyred, they postponed the elections. And in 1988, when there were floods, devastating floods, the elections are postponed. That is one opinion. In case emergency, these can be postponed. But there is another opinion that we should not postpone the elections, and strictly according to the Constitution, these elections should be held in the stipulated period of time. I think
Right. So,
we
Rana
are
Sahab, what's your opinion?
working.
Which one's yours?
I think we should, if at all choice is given, we should prefer going for elections in time, until and unless everything is out of our hands and we are not able to handle that. I think the constitutional provisions should be tried to be catered for,
Okay.
but all the same, once there are compelling circumstances, those are also to be considered. That all depends upon the people who are at the helm of the affairs. They will think the election commission, the government representatives, the parliamentarians, and a lot of people will participate in this discussion and debate whether we can afford to do it or not. But the best
Right.
would be, God willing, there is some peace, election should be held in time.
Right. Farooq, the impact of the security situation, of course, exists and perhaps is not limited to the KP itself only. There is, of course, a huge concern with regards to the spike in terrorist activities within the country. At the same time, we have elections coming in KP and Punjab, and then, of course, later in the year in the country as well. How prepared do you think we can be in terms of the current issue of threat that we face, especially when moving forward? Perhaps there is still some sort of discussion that is required or seems to be required regarding the kind of policy that is going to be implemented with regards to the security situation. At the same time, there is a difference of opinion with regards to the elections, and the different parties are also very polarized at the moment in terms of their followers. In this situation, how are we going to balance the threat of terrorism and the issue of upholding the constitution, as Rana Sahab was saying?
Right, Sana, and that is a very intriguing question. But allow me to actually go back to what we were discussing yesterday, because yesterday we discussed foreign terror in detail. So I just wanted to actually remind you that I was talking about a speculation campaign that has been started by PTI's conspiracy theorists, right? And they keep on saying that somehow all of this is because the government actually wants to delay the election and all that, right? And I said, mercifully, so far Imran Khan Saab has not said it in public. He hasn't endorsed this conspiracy theory. Today, I thought that he cannot shock me or disappoint me more. But today, and honestly, a political person like me, this is coming out of right from my heart. Today, he went on national television, 50 channels and all counting, and he repeated the same conspiracy theory. This is, pardon my language, this is shameful, Sana. When 100 people have died, and policemen in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa were being beheaded when there was Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government by PTI. They were being attacked and beheaded when Imran Khan Sahib was Prime Minister of Pakistan. He should know the context. He should not be supporting any conspiracy theory coming on television, given the kind of megaphone you have. And, once again, I'm shocked, repulsed by the behavior of media that actually has delaying mechanism but would air any rubbish that is being spoken on air, right? This is a sad commentary on where we are. So you were saying that how prepared we can be. The answer is, do we even want to be prepared at all? Remember one thing. At this moment, there is no election imminent at the center. There are 2 elections that are imminent in 2 provinces, right? So what is the worst case scenario? That they don't take place in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months? They take place with the national elections. That is the best possible or worst possible scenario, right? Nobody is even talking about delaying the federal elections. So why is it that everybody keeps on speculating about this? Imran Khan Sahib knows where he has the levers to actually ensure that elections take place in time. I tell you how. Earlier we were talking about economy. There was, this speculation in the media that the fund is demanding national consensus on this. Imran Khan Sahib volunteers that we are going to talk about Charter of Economy, and it will be ensured that there is going to be election in time because of policy consistency, right? Imran Khan Sahib volunteers that let us talk about war and terror, and there is a comprehensive war and terror discussion by all political parties or stakeholders. Who will then delay the election? Nobody will. So at this moment, all this speculation is sad commentary on the way we have been behaving. Our children, our brothers, our sisters are repeatedly, daily killed, and we are just doing politics for the sake of politics.
Right.
Sana, elections get delayed or not, and I have an anecdote. If you'll give me another chance, I will.
No, go ahead.
Okay. When I joined PTV, I was given a mandate by people who hired me, right? They said that you have to focus only on war and terror and national interest. And I asked, what are those things, right? They said economy and, winning the war and terror. And I have kept up my end of bargain. And I kept on asking, what about politics? I was told that this is like doing, day-to-day business. There was given an example, right?
Okay.
That if a printing press is publishing a paper or a magazine, they also take up, small business jobs so that they can offset the cost of printing, right? So politics is only a side business, and that is okay. You can talk whatever you want, but don't compromise on those things. I have not compromised on either of the 2. But why is it that everybody who has benefited from this country's system is hell-bent on misdirecting everything, right? So this saddens me, and I keep on reminding everybody that you are in 2 existential crises. One, economy, because without economy, hold elections. Without economy, feed the poor. Without economy, take care of any business at all. There won't be any government, right? And when you talk about war and terror, who has not been attacked by the terrorists? And yet we keep on obscuring the debate.
Right.
We keep on, discussing other things. So at this moment, please, if you want to ensure that the elections are in time, then Imran Khan Sahib should volunteer unconditionally that he is ready to talk about economy and war and terror, and then I can assure you there won't be any delay in the elections.
Well, we hope that there is such discussion taking place between the political leaders of the country, and we hope that the priorities are in place. Rana Sahib, there is also concern with regards to the election campaign run in Punjab. We of course know that Ms. Maryam Nawaz had been tasked earlier to go ahead with this campaign, but as part of what is being called the reorganization tour, she has named a few people today, and of course they include the PTI chairman and two former chief justices as well, and two others that she hasn't named but has called the crutches of Imran Khan. When we take a look at this particular stance, it seems that perhaps that is part of a strategy that is being implemented, or a stance that is being taken as part of the election campaign. Will we be seeing more evidence or more claims being made regarding previous decision makers or previous members of the judiciary or parties, especially in reference to the names that have been taken today? And what sort of a contribution do you think or impact that is going to have? Because we of course know, or we have had claims of a lot of things that have happened but without accountability.
Sana, this is absolutely correct, and all these comments by Maryam Nawaz about these 3-4 persons are not untrue. They're absolutely based on truth, and there is no iota of doubt about their conduct and about their role, which was totally negative and against the interest of the nation. So she's justified, and it will have an appeal to the general masses and to especially the workers of the Pakistan Muslim League N, because they think, and rightly so, that their leadership suffered at the hands of this collusion and collaboration of these people. And they have ruined the country, they have ruined the economy, they have ruined the system. The system was working all right, the country was being run successfully, economy was growing, and how come they had the cheek to disturb everything? Are they owner or are they kings of this country? They took everything into their hands, and the judge played havoc with the country by giving wrong judgments and against law and against facts. It doesn't behove of a judge to act like this. And likewise, the general also did the same, and he has confessed at this. And everybody knows, he came on media and said, we have done this, and we repent and we will not do it again. So it amounts to confession. So she is justified in carrying on this message to the people that they have suffered at the hands of these people. Not only they, the political leadership, the whole of the country. And I think history will not forgive them. Maybe our people are not able to take action, but history will not overlook their role, which was so negative and which was so historically wrong and unethical. And I don't have the words, I don't want to use those words, which such people deserve by contributing.
But Rana Sahab, there is also concern with regards to Maryam Nawaz's leading the campaign, and perhaps this being not as being something that is agreeable to all the party members. Of course, the resignation of Mr. Shahid Khan Abbasi is also being linked to this. Is that so?
Shahid Khan Abbasi is a sole voice, and he is not going to go to that extent. Rather, he is, in a way, retreated a little by saying that let her organize the party, but he is not going to quit the party, or he'll stay back with the party. We know his commitment, but somehow or other, sometimes such decisions are taken. But as far as the whole of the party is concerned, I personally think they are 95% happy, and there is no divergence of opinion, because she is perhaps the best choice at this stage to fight back as leader of the political party, the PML-N, and you will see the results. And she has announced her election campaign right today, whereas all of other people are double-minded, but she is absolutely clear in her mind that she will contest the elections and she'll perform.
Right. Rana Sahab, last question, because we keep on hearing news or rumors around the return of Nawaz Sharif, but we still haven't seen that, and the days, of course, keep on passing by. When exactly is that going to happen?
I think it's a matter of 4 to 5 weeks, and there's only one thing which is left. That is a petition in the High Court for interim bail, protective bail. which he'll get, inshallah. Shortly he'll be coming.
All right.
And to come back to lead the party.
Okay, thank you very much, Rana Sahab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion.
Very kind of you. God bless you.
Thank you, as always. Farooq, considering the situation as where we stand today, especially in terms of the economic and security concerns, there are, of course, the stances of various political parties that are also into play. And there is, of course, a lot of concern as to what sort of narratives is going to be taken and which party is going to succeed in what way. We've talked about the various strategies that may be implemented by the political parties, but considering the current conditions and the two factors that you emphasized upon, do you think that these will largely play a role in terms of how the elections pan out, or do you think other factors would also contribute?
No, I don't think that these two factors are going to actually impact the national debate or how politics actually takes place in this country, because our media is insensitive both to the economy and war and terror. For example, day before yesterday, there was a massacre in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and yesterday, the same day also, the same day, yesterday and today, all the talk was whether elections are going to be delayed or not, right? So this is, willful negligence. I believe that media that does not know how to handle economy and how to handle war and terror, or it does not want to contribute at all. But having said that, I think that there are 2 or 3 things that are worth commenting. For example, this crisis within political parties that I have been repeatedly telling you about, that PML-N, the only party that can defeat PML-N is PML-N itself, because in the past also we heard about the possibility of politicization, right? One man can quash that, and that is Mian Nawaz Sharif. The moment he comes back to the country, his voter will focus on him, not on the divisions, right? Having said that, there are 2 or 3 things which are regarding, what is must. And I think that in coming days, you are going to see polarization and perhaps falling apart from within PTI's ranks as well. And but I hear there's a huge group that is ready to fly away. The little birdie will fly away, right?
All right.
But regarding overall situation, I'm sick and tired of this hypocrisy of the media pundits who keep on talking about dynastic politics and how it is bad, when if they are in a position of power, they will, make sure that their own brothers, their own sisters, their own cousins, their own children get employment in the same kind of institutions, right? This is our social fabric in this society, and I'm not opposed to that. If you want to do it, do it. Right. But at least stop being hypocrite.
Right.
That on one side you are actually doing exactly that, perverting the system to get privilege, and on the other side, then politics, same happens in politics, you start actually complaining all the time. Right. What are you doing? I'm going to conclude one last bit. You are only helping the terrorists because you are undermining all the institutions and all the groups that could have actually stood by you, by actually daily undermining and criticizing them.
Absolutely, but we hope that there is no space for hypocrisy in politics. Unfortunately, there's always been some, and we hope that we see it end soon rather than later. That's all that we have from the discussion. Thank you, Farooq. Thank you, Rana Sahab, for being a part of the discussion as well. We'll see you tomorrow.